And we are live. What is going on, coaches? How are y'all doing? Does math play a role in football? That's what I want to know, coming from a math teacher role. And I have Coach Rich Worsell. I hope I said that right. If not, please come here and punch me in the face. He is the analytics director at the University of Akron, and we're going to talk analytics. Coach, thank you so much for being here, man.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. And I'll make this short. Math plays no part in football. So that's the end of the episode.
All right. Y'all have a good day and have a great week. Well, Coach, I know that you are from across the pond, like we were talking about earlier. You kind of have like that storybook, what all the coaches over in Europe and everybody want to have. Could you give us a little bit about your history and how you wound up where you're at now?
I tell you, I mean, I went to college in Wales, Aberystwyth University, and played football in college. There is a college league in Britain. About 70 schools that play, so it's pretty good number of schools. And after graduation, I was working for an investment company doing offshore brokering. Went into college thinking I was going to be a math teacher. Both my parents were math teachers. So shout out to the math teachers like you. So, and I graduated. I was sat there one day in the office, and I was like, I don't want to sit here behind a desk for the next 40 years. I want to coach football. That's become my passion. That's my hobby. And so for all the people in Europe and everything, like, hey, my dog coming in, everybody. It's he's looking for a comfy spot.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, there you go. He's set. So, you spend all day at work, 9 till 5 at work, doing whatever you do, and then you come home and you open up your playbook and you call players and you're organizing practices and calling your coaches, and then you practice on the weekends and during the week. And so I wanted to get more serious about it. I'd kind of been through a lot of the British stuff. I'd coached on the national team and started applying for GA spots and was really lucky to get one. So I GA'd at a small school in rural Wisconsin called Lakeland College. Did 2 years there. Those 2 years led to getting another job where I did 3 years at Millikan University, where I was the pass game coordinator and coach receivers and QBs, and then got my first coordinating job right after that. So I did 3 seasons as the coordinator at Illinois College, and then we had a really good run there. We broke a lot of records. We kind of rebuilt that program, and then went to University of Laverne, which is in Southern California. So I kind of been working my way around the country. Inherited a program that had won 4 games in the 4 years prior. So was really a rebuild. When I went out and interviewed in the spring, they only had 4 linemen. So, I mean, it just was like, all right, we're going to do this all the way from the beginning. And so I did 8 seasons there. In the 2015 season, we won the league championship.
Nice.
First time in 20 years. Again, we broke about every record. I think all our guys own the rushing records, but about every offensive mark you could want. And then it'd be about December of 18 going into 19 January, I got a phone call from Akron saying, hey, do you want to come here? And we have a role. We don't have a job description for the role, but if you want to come in and find a lot of different ways to help, then this would be cool. So I kind of jumped in, and then we've been working through what it means all the way. But, one of the things I'm passionate about is trying to help coaches from Europe and around the world get to the U.S. For them, like so many in the U.S., it's just a dream. It's a fantasy. It's, something that couldn't possibly happen. And so I'm trying to encourage people to make them realize that, yeah, you have skills that you can offer and try and make it happen. So I'm kind of mentoring a group of them right now and trying to help them get over here. And we've been focusing a lot on that last few months. So it's a growing sport out there, and people got to have an open mind about people coming in with different accents, and that's really about it.
Oh, that is freaking awesome. I want to touch on how you actually got your first job in Wisconsin. Well, before we do that, coaches, if you have any questions for Coach, put them in the comments. We already have some. Cole says that math does play a big role in being good at football. I want to touch on what your thoughts on how to also apply that to high school, because I know a lot of high school, it is big in the upper levels, but not really that much in high school. The man, Coach Butler, is here. Hello. He did have you. He was the first foreigner, I would say, to be on. But
that's what I heard.
Yeah, he led the way, just like you led the way for other coaches getting over here and actually coaching.
Yeah.
Coach Fidel, what's going on? How you doing? Coach played football in Germany a couple of seasons as an import and loved it. Heck yeah, man. So I want to tell you, how did you just like send out feelers to anyone in the United States? But hey, can I come coach for you? Or did you have a connection from your time in college and playing? How did you go from over in Europe to a small town in Wisconsin?
I mean, I think it's like all things. It's persistence. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from my mom was, you can achieve anything in life if you're willing to sacrifice for it. I graduated college, I was coaching, and then NFL Europe still existed at that point. So I got a coaching internship with those guys. Went up to Scotland, was with the Claymores. Kenny Marjoram was the offensive coordinator. Played at Stanford and then played for the 85 Bears and then played for the 49ers under Bill Walsh. So kind of been around a lot of good people.
Yes, he has.
So, I did some time there and then was going to go back for training camp. And then, I really decided, hey, I want to go to the U.S. So I had one job lined up and that fell through. So I was sat there in August and was like, all right, every job that opens, I'm in for it. I'd already been emailing every coach in America my resume and probably annoying them all at that point. Just, getting my resume once a month would probably drive anyone crazy. And so I when people ask how many jobs do you apply for, I'm like, hey, I applied for everything. Like it didn't, there was no differentiation to me. Make the big time where you're at. So when I sent an email to Lakeland College, and then I get an email back from the head coach saying, hey, I can't figure out how to dial you internationally. Like, call me. And so I called him and we spent 10 minutes on the phone. And I remember him asking, tell me about the footwork for outside zone if you're a running back. And so we talked about aiming points and reads. And he's like, all right, you got the job. When can you be here? And I'm like, I'll go in tomorrow and quit. So I went into my job and they're like, you got to give 2 weeks notice. I'm like, no, I'm out.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Fire me?
I'm moving to Wisconsin, so see ya. And I got there, and my first night on campus, got to my dorm room, and for some reason there was no furniture in my dorm room.
Oh wow!
So I had, when you travel internationally, you're allowed one bag. So you're allowed at that point like a 50-pound bag. So I have one 50-pound bag. I'm stood in a dorm room in Wisconsin where I don't know anybody. There's no furniture. So I just kind of laid out clothes on the floor and kind of figured out. But it's, that little idea of being, you got to adapt and overcome, that kind of stuck with me through my career. Is like, you're going to reach obstacles and you just got to find ways to make the best of it. So slept on the floor for a couple of nights. Then my bed showed up and I was like, all right, sweet. Things are getting better. And
upgrade.
I had an awesome time there. It was, I think a lot of people wouldn't be excited about that job, but for me, it's like being in the NFL. It was just, great kids, and we won games and just talking ball every day. I mean, it was awesome.
All right. So was that the first time you've ever been to America?
No, I had.
Okay.
My summer vacations from college, I'd come out and spend time with high school coaches and work some camps and some stuff like that, because I needed to know, was this something that I seriously wanted to do, or is it just a passionate hobby? And so I would come out, I'd save up my money, and then I'd go to State College High School in Pennsylvania with Coach Kreider and Lintal, and spend 2 weeks at their training camp. And that was my summer vacation, was running around coaching high school ball, and that was awesome. And that's where I knew that this is something I wanted to do, regardless of pay, where it was, being away from family. I would sacrifice a lot to do that.
Okay. I'll freaking love that. Coach Charles says, hey, from Wisconsin coach, once a cheesehead, always a cheesehead.
Hey, go back, go.
Yeah. Quick six. Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. Travis, I upgraded a little bit with your help. I appreciate it, buddy. So you've been going all around. Now, that question, Is that something you find that a lot of coaches ask you? And is that about the outside zone and the steps? Is that because they don't think you know enough about football because you're not American? Or is that just something they would ask anybody to gauge if they know football or not? What was your thoughts where you just roll your eyes and be like, oh, come on, man. Everybody knows. I wouldn't be shooting my shot with everyone if I didn't know the steps to outside zone.
I took it as he wanted me to coach running backs and he wanted to know that I knew something about running backs. And when I got there, I'd spent all the time researching running backs, and I walk in my first day, and he's like, "Hey, you're coaching receivers now." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." So I better brush up on that. But I think there's natural curiosity from everybody. Now more so than ever, there is international players in the NFL. There is international athletes coming over and competing at the college level. There is not very many international coaches at the collegiate ranks. I'm the only one at Division 1, 2, or 3. There's a couple of others at Division 3. But there really isn't too many. So it might be the first time you run into an international coach. And then it's cool to hear about this sport that's huge over here that, there's 70 college teams and there's 50 adult teams, and that's in England. And then you go to Germany and they have 20,000 people come to a game. And it's
for football?
I mean, some of them, yeah. Some of the
that is crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, and there's some professional setups out there that have their own stadiums and facilities. So, and then that's just Europe, and then it's growing across the world. I mean, Mexico has vibrant football, and obviously we're familiar with Canada, but so a lot of people are curious about that, and then it's trying to figure out like what's the standard, how does it equate to the US? And so I mean the teams I was involved with, it's kind of crazy because you would have athletes on one end of the spectrum. It's like kind of like high school probably, where you have guys that are backups that will never play, that may not have that ability but work hard. But then on the high end, we had athletes that like in London, we had a number of guys that played in the NFL that were that kind of caliber of athletes. So you just don't know what you're going to have. You could have a huge range of people. It's kind of fun.
Did you ever run into JT and O'Sullivan in the European League?
We didn't. I don't know if I was there at the same time. We had Craig Nall was our quarterback. He was backup for the Packers. But I mean, I remember Brad Johnson playing NFL Europe, Jay Fiedler, Kurt Warner. I mean, I thought NFL Europe was phenomenal for the NFL. I mean, even our quarterback, Tom Arthur, that I work for now, he was a quarterback for the Scottish Claymores. So occasionally him and I can talk about the developmental worth of getting 10 games of opportunities to play versus maybe practice or 7-on-7 reps is huge for those guys.
Yeah, I agree. I hope they bring it back, man. I just like football all year long. Mm-hmm. Like I just want to watch football all year long. And this is now the time where I'm really bored when it comes to sports because I'm not a big baseball fan.
Yeah.
And I don't really watch basketball, but that's here nor there. I'm wondering.
We loved when the XFL was going 2 years ago now. I mean, I was into that. I was watching it every week. I was like, this is cool.
And mic'd up? Dude, it was so cool hearing them mic'd up. Like, oh, I know what that play is.
No, that was the best part, was hearing the play call and then hearing them talk to the QB and then being like, all right, now you can kind of see what, it just, I thought there's some stuff that was really, really cool. And
do you think they're going to incorporate that in the NFL?
I don't think so. I mean, the NFL is so secretive on some of that stuff. It's like, I mean, if you watch Hard Knocks now versus Hard Knocks 10 years ago, they're showing you practice footage and, practice film and people coaching. And now all the teams censor so much stuff out. When you really watch Hard Knocks, there really isn't that much actual football in it.
No, it's more like Kardashians.
Yeah, it's like the players are hanging out and going to dinner or going to the beach or, there isn't the actual like football stuff that was really cool when it started.
Yeah, because that's not what sells. It's sold for football coaches like us. We're like, oh heck yeah, let's see what they're doing. What kind of coaching cues can I get up and everything? But now Everybody else is like, no, I want the drama, and the drama sells, and it's like, this bores me.
Yeah, I think, I go back and I watch some of the old ones, and the stuff you got out of it was really valuable as a coach, but now it's kind of a letdown.
All right, so
sorry if you're my bad.
Yeah. You were an offensive coordinator and you called plays and you broke records. What kind of did you err to the side of running more, or were you more passing? Were you balanced? And did you use analytics even back then?
So when I started the first 3 seasons, we were like mostly one personnel, could line up in anything, no huddle. And the last season, we just started going back to some old school kind of West Coast 2-back kind of philosophy.
Why'd you change? What made you do that?
We just felt like we had some fullbacks and tight ends and guys that, we wanted to have the ability to change personnel. And so we kind of changed away from it. Our first season, we didn't have as much depth. We only had like a finite number of good players, so we didn't want to take guys on and off. And then after a couple of recruiting classes, we had found a fullback and a tight end and multiple receivers. So we wanted to get more guys involved in the game. And then when I went to Laverne, we were rebuilding that thing. And so we kind of went back to where I had started at Illinois College, which was one personnel group, not subbing, because we didn't, again, have the depth to kind of change. And we did that for 2 years. And I remember after the 13 season, we lost a game to a team that I felt didn't have as much talent as we did defensively. They kind of shut our offense down. And I felt like I had to go one of 2 ways as a play caller. Either have the guys go up to the line of scrimmage, look at the defense, look back at me, and then I give them a play, which meant kind of I'm checking every play. Or to kind of go to an offense where the QBs had the answer on that play. I didn't want to have to be the answer to be, well, next time I get them, I'm going to go play action, because they loaded the box. And so I remember actually sitting in a restaurant talking to a coach that was talking about, hey, you've got to have the answers now, not a play later. And so after that season, after the 13th season, we kind of threw out the whole offense. And we had been doing RPO stuff since 2009. We'd been dabbling with it. And so we were like, all right, receivers, we're not going to try and come in and block guys in the box. We're not going to do that. And so we kind of started playing this very spread RPO type offense, taking our core philosophies, but then employing it to that. And we changed significantly. And in the 14th season, we had a big jump offensively, but I felt like we weren't scoring enough points relative to how many yards per game we had. I mean, there would be games we would have 500 or 600 yards of offense, but maybe we only scored 30 points. And so I felt like there was a disconnect when you looked at the top teams in the country and saw how many yards they had and where we were, and then the touchdown scored, it was way under. So then I started looking at, how many drives do we have? How many times do we end up in the red zone? Okay, that percentage is in line with those best teams. All right, let's look at our problems must be the red zone. And so after that 14th season, we were about 60 to 70% pass in the red zone, still kind of in that mindset of we're going to get ourselves to the red zone and take shots and score that way. And we saw that the best team in our league was about 70% run in the red zone. So the next season in 15, I was like, all right, we're going to get the ball to the red zone, and then we're going to run the ball into the end zone. I don't care if we go the whole season with no passing touchdowns. We're going to run it in. And that 15 season, we didn't lose a league game. That's the year we won a championship. Just with that kind of change.
So that's what you think did it? The running in the red zone?
Yeah. I think just as a direct result of the studies the year before and changing our play calling percentages in that part of the field, changed really how we're game planning, because I wasn't spending as much time creating pass concepts for the red zone. And the year before we had a receiver in that 14 season, we had a receiver score 6 touchdowns one game. So, I mean, it was a big change for us to not be wanting to do that. So our running backs and, we didn't really have a dual threat QB. He could run, but I mean, it was kind of a risk. And he was significantly better than the second and third quarterback. So we're not in a position of trying to run the QB. So as a spread offense without a running QB, you have to make sure you're in the correct formations and that stuff. So, that kind of math led us to that. So it's really that California time where I started using more and more math and trying to see what other people are doing and trying to gather numbers. And I think that's the hardest thing I found being in a Division III school is sometimes you can't get accurate numbers to try and build the studies. And I guess it's probably similar to high school. You may not have all the box scores and the stats you need, and so here I have access to a much bigger amount of data, so I can kind of go out there and gather. And now we have open film at Division I, so if some school out on the West Coast has like the best red zone offense this year, I can go pull up all their film and
nice
and just go directly to it and see what was it they were doing down there. Did they just have an alpha player that made them awesome, or did they have something schematic that you could take advantage of? Because and you're a math guy, so you'll get it. My mindset is always, we're always recruiting and trying to get better, but what if our players don't get better? So that factor is fixed. How can we impact our team? So I'm like, well, I can influence it as a play caller. I can change the percentages of what I'm calling, what plays I'm calling. So I'm always trying to maximize that part. And then if you do happen to get better players, then it makes life a little bit easier for you, because then you can call something that shouldn't work and they just make it work for you.
All right, so you said, and that is an issue. Most coaches they go with data that they can find from the teams that they're scouting, so they can implement that. But that's only like 2 or 3 games, and then max preps. But coaches lie on max preps just to get the clout and everything like that. What would you say for high school coaches if they want to go the road of analytics and they don't have the good data? What's something that they can do that you did yourself because you D3, you don't have that much data to go on? It's something simple they can do to like help them in, let's say, the red zone or something like that. What is something that a high school coach can implement now and be successful using math?
So I think one thing to do, and it's every league, every conference is different in America, I guess around the world. Winning the MAC East, what you need to do is different than winning the Big Ten or the SEC or the high school league. So it's if you do have open exchange within your high school league, is finding some way in Huddle to get all the games in there so that you can get data into them and build your own data set, which takes a long time, but now becomes incredibly valuable to you. That if you can get all the games in, you can start putting in and figure out, okay, who's the top red zone team in our league? Okay, it's this team. And then, you can export data out and video out and back it up, but you want to keep notes of certain games. So one of the things at Laverne Lake in 2011, we were really not too good, but we overachieved and we won 4 games that year. And I remember watching 2 of our other league teams play, and one of them was running some really cool like split flow zone, split flow leave the end, and the other team then had to make some halftime adjustments. And I remember watching that game thinking, hey, if we ever get to a point of having some players that can do this, this game is going to be teaching tape. So we kept that game on a hard drive accessible, and lo and behold, 5-6 years later, it comes out. And and we used it again in 18. We pulled that film out and brought it in because no one had run that sort of stuff against that team, but I knew they had the same D coordinator. They were kind of same, philosophically. You could see, hey, he made his adjustments at halftime, so you get a whole half of just doing whatever you want before they make serious adjustments. So it kind of tells you a lot. So if I'm at a high school, going back to your original question, it's keep games that have things of interest, even if they're not applicable to you now, but they could be down the road. And then building your own data sets through Huddle or Quick Cut, whatever it is you use, just trying to gather the film. And if you can get the film, then you can get the data, because I know you can send it out and get it broken down, or you can put it in, like at the end of the season, clean everything else out and be like, all right, we're just putting up all this team's film and we're going to take a look at these guys. So that's the hardest part, is with the amount of storage you get on there now, is like,
yeah, they're like, I want more money, so I'm going to take it away. If you want the storage, you got to pay more money.
Yeah. So that to me is huge. And that was a hard thing for me, even coming to Akron. I got here in January of 19, and, I'm looking at a lot of the previous year's games and there was no data in them. So, we're bringing in all this film and trying to get caught up, but then there's a point where you're like, all right, if I want to get formation information for this league, I've got to sit there, and I got 49 MAC games and 23 of them don't have anything in it. We're going to have to sit down and do this the old-fashioned way with elbow grease and just try and do 5 a day and spend a week just typing. So I think that's really good. Now, from a high school point of view, looking up at a college, then I can go on and get all sorts of stats. There's great websites out there with stats that you can get rankings information. But then it's hard to filter out, is this team really good because they just have unbelievable players, or is this team really good because they're doing something that gives them an advantage? So you're trying to always
that out.
Well, I think part of it is you don't know till you watch the film. You pop on YouTube and take a look, or you see all these guys are getting drafted in the first round, and so
exclude Alabama okay. Let me ask you this then. We're talking about all the great teams: Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson. Do you then look at when they play each other, because then kind of talent is kind of washed, to look at the schemes if they do it? Can you take a subset of data out from those games? Or do you just say, forget those guys because we're never going to have those all 22 Division I players? I mean, first-round draft picks, and let's go somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, those teams have just elite-level talent. I mean,
that's an understatement.
So you can do things that other people can't do. So where I'm always interested is all right, who's killing it in the group of 5? Who's that Big Ten team that keeps winning a bunch of games, that doesn't have those elite level players, like the guys at Northwest. I think they do a lot. So it's trying to identify these kind of programs and then see what they're doing. So that can be a little tricky at first, because there is a natural gravitation towards, all right, who scored the most points? Okay, Bama. All right, let's go study Alabama and just do what they do. But after a while, the more you look around at different people, you see different things, and then the NFL is that's a whole different kettle of fish. That's a very even league talent-wise. So then it becomes kind of interesting to see, why is it some teams win more than others, and it's a whole different discussion.
Because they have Tom Brady.
Sign that guy, you'll be okay.
All right, coaches, again, thank you so much for being here. I'm having a blast. T-Max says, do you do the Kevin Kelly style stuff? He also just got, I don't know if you know who Kevin Kelly is.
Yeah,
he just got a gig right up the road from me, so I may have to go visit him. But when you dive into the analytics, are you doing that kind of stuff? Like, hey guys, we should not punt right now, or we should go for 2, or are you looking more for adjustments in the offseason to get better the next year?
It really impacts everything. So I know when people think about analytics, they think initially of game day decisions. Yeah. Should we go for it on 4th down, or should we punt in this situation? What does it mean mathematically? If we, based on field position, all these kind of things, like odds of the other team scoring, game strategy. But it also equally impacts training camp or spring ball, how many reps of 2nd and 6 you're getting versus 3rd and 1, and trying to build out models of, how many of each thing you want to have during that spring ball. Everything in football is situational, so practice should be too. So you want to keep, you don't want to just keep tabs and be like at the end of spring ball, hey, today we're going to run 28 reps of 3rd and 17 because we didn't rep it once. But you want to try and build models out and give people purpose each day of what you're trying to do. So, I mean, there's analytics builds that way. At Division I, it builds into how you want to distribute your scholarships. Because we don't, I think the interesting thing in the NFL, they have a salary cap so they can allocate dollars to different positions. But in college, you don't have a salary cap. You just have your fixed number of scholarships, but you can distribute them any way you want. So, you could allocate 84 scholarships to quarterbacks and 1 on defense, but you may not be too successful. But the impact on the rest of the country may be pretty dire when you have like all the quarterbacks on your team. So
and everyone else gets bit by the injury bug at quarterback.
Yeah, but I think everyone relates it back to game day because that's the most visible part.
That's what I do, if I'm being honest. I'm always thinking of it like, oh, should we go for it now? We're in the plus 35. What do the numbers say we should do?
Yeah, and that, I think, we certainly carry 4th down charts that we make and 2-point charts and clock management charts. Should we onside this or not? How many timeouts do we have left? If we onside this and don't get it, where do they have the ball? With where could we get it back if we force a 3 and out? So you're trying to follow through like the outcome of this play and then the potential, splitting of what could happen and tell them what it's going to look like. But I mean, one big thing is go back to your season last year, drop all the plays into a cut up, bring it into Excel, average out a game and be like, hey, we have 20 1st and 10 calls in a game. We have 12 2nd and long, 6 2nd and medium, like calculate it all out, red zone backed up, open field, and then look at how many reps you get in training camp. If you don't know how many you get in training camps, then go back, find your scripts from the year before and count them up and then start distributing them based off what you get in games. Bill Walsh always said you should get as many reps in training camp with team as you do in a season. So, somewhere in that 1,000, some range. Well, if you're able to play a whole season in training camp, like, or in spring or both, then that makes you think about things a little bit differently. Like, and then I think it focuses your mind as a play caller offensively and defensively. Like, hey, I spent all this time talking about 3rd down pass game, but, 3rd downs in the red zone, we only had 4 last season inside the 10, so I'm like, I'm spending too much time on things that don't happen enough versus things that happen more often that you need more snaps for. So I think the mathematical aspect, it does impact every part of the game. And even if it's just from a basic level of understanding the numbers, I think it helps you make better educated decisions.
I love that. And I never thought about trying to fit an entire season in the preseason so that you can get the reps. And you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of us put a lot of emphasis on 1 down and distance, where if you go and look at the data, you're not really in that down and distance that much. You're in another one. So wouldn't it help you as a team and benefit you if you actually rep that down and distance that you're actually using and seeing a lot so that your players get comfortable? Go ahead.
We used to, when I was at Laverne, and I was so guilty of this, like we may run team like the first few days of camp where you're just trying to run stuff, but it doesn't have any down and distance, and you don't put it in a different part of the field. Like if you have a big play action concept where you're trying to throw the ball way down the field and you're always running team on the same part of the field, that concept changes when you're on your own 30 versus the 40 going in. So plays kind of can change as well based on where you are on the field. So even if you didn't want to necessarily go through that process of putting down distance on everything, moving where the ball is located changes how plays are executed because of how much space you have and that kind of jazz. So I think you kind of find the same thing when you're doing scout team, when most people divide the field in half. Now you only have 50 yards in an end zone. So if you want to throw that big home run play, it's really hard to do that. And I kind of found with some teams, we may rep it a bunch, but then in the game where you had all that much more space to throw it, the QB still wouldn't throw it as, we hadn't actually repped it like it would be in the game. So, yeah, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, not at all, because I love that. What you're saying is you have to rep things situationally.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just run, because when I first started, before I knew anything about analytics or actually how to practice, I was on the defensive side of the ball, and and offensively, they would always practice on the 50-yard line in the middle of the field the entire time. So by the end of the season, our practice field from like the 40 to the other 40 was just brown, and there was nothing else. And then when I went back and looked, we were on the hashes moving up and down the field like 75% of the time, but we never practiced that during the season. So when it came game, our alignment was messed up. Our play calling, we were running things that should have been going to the wide side, actually into the boundary, spacing, and it all pulls back to what do you actually see during the game? You should be practicing that, and you can't do that unless you're an expert like yourself in analytics and just looking at the data. And I freaking love that.
Yeah, just go back, look at your data. See how many snaps did you have last season? Start there and start breaking it out. And, it helps you in game planning. If you're, that's where I always used to kind of go around in circles. Is like, okay, I've heard about opening scripts that were 20 plays long. Some were 10, what boxes do I need on my play call? I think the $1 million question is, how many plays is too many for a game plan?
Yes.
Versus too little. If you have too little, it can get easy for your opponent to figure it out. If it's too many, then you dilute it too much during the week. So then what you can do is go back. This is another fascinating exercise. If you want to feel bad about yourself, is go through the game, get all your play calls, then go back to practice and see how many times you're in those play calls and see how many reps you wasted during the week, and try and obviously you're always going to have some wastage because every situation doesn't always occur every week, but good Lord.
The first time I did that, I am, pardon my French, a fucking horrible coach because I practiced this one play that I never called in the game, but I wasted throughout the course of the week, maybe 45 minutes every time we repped it or team or 7-on-7 or whatever. And I never called it. And I was like, I'm an idiot. Why? There's a huge discrepancy in what we practice to what we call. And you're absolutely right, man. If you want to hate yourself, go and do that and just realize, I need to change.
Yeah. It's crazy doing that. And you always have that play. I always did anyway, where you're like, okay, we'll put this play in. We're going to spend all this week. We'll watch it on film. We'll coach it. And you get to the game and someone's like, hey, you want to call this play? And you're like, nah, I don't. I really don't want to. And really, I think what you realize in the game is you're honest with yourself. Is you trust that play if you're ahead and it doesn't, you can run it without having an impact on the game. Otherwise, you're not going to mess with it. So then it's how quickly and early in the week can you recognize this is one of those sort of plays and eliminate that from your game plan and focus on what matters.
And what have you found? Like how early? Like when do you pull the trigger? Like if you're going to call this play or not?
I would pull the trigger on it like Tuesday.
Okay.
If we ran it and it looked good the first time we ran it, then I'm like, all right, we're keeping this. It's going to be gold and we'll run it. But if I was like, okay, I think we're going to have to make a point of addressing this in a meeting, they don't quite get it, we've got multiple things wrong on it, then I'm out. Like just
pull the plug.
Pull the plug on it. Like if it's something you absolutely love that's critical for you, then probably put it in like some sort of training camp install the next year and do that. But there isn't time during the week to do that.
I love it. I'm right here, man. All right, so we have a couple of questions. Coach Butler says I should check the ELF. I don't know what it is, but if you drop me a link, Coach, on Twitter, I will check that out. Coach wants to know when you were looking at the red zone and stuff like that, because you're big time and you can pull up every game in the entire history of the world. When you're looking at the red zone, what is like a main takeaway you picked up from that study?
Well, when I did the study in 14, it was really, I just basically made a cut up of all the drives resulting in a touchdown, basically, and just went through and watched them and charted them. And the biggest takeaway was the run to pass ratio was at that point teams were able to run the ball into the red zone. I did a similar thing about a year ago, kind of low red zone in the NFL, and kind of found everyone in the NFL played a similar kind of bracket coverage in obvious passing situations. And there was 2 pass concepts that really showed up significantly against that concept. So it was kind of interesting to see everybody running the same kind of stuff successfully.
Don't leave us hanging, man. What were the concepts?
Any kind of running back angle route.
Oh, okay.
Like Texas. I think when you're playing bracket coverage, it is hard when the running back is breaking out and then burst back in. There isn't, you can easily defeat that linebacker, and now linebackers aren't paid to really cover people. So especially inside backers. So that, and then the third thing was the idea of kind of condensing down a single receiver, running a corner route, releasing the back in the flat, and then bringing across a receiver from the other side of the formation. So if you could get the corner route, throw it right now. But if not, you removed that half of the field. Now your crosser from the other half has to win. And so you're kind of, as a QB, can sneak at the corner, come back to the back, and then eyes back across. Then there was like a variety of NFL teams were running the same kind of jazz. So
it is a copycat league.
It really is. When something works for one team, then you're going to see everybody else do it. And I think you see it really in every league. It's hard. Like,
yes.
When you're game planning and you see somebody get murdered on something, you're like,
that's going in the playbook.
Let's put that in this week. And then all of a sudden, I think by the end of the season, you're diluting what it is you want to do because you've done so many things from outside of it.
Yeah, I agree. I have the story where we're playing this team and they had a difficult time against the wing tee, just the red blue stuff. And we weren't a wing tee team at all. We were 11 personnel inside zone. Our head coach comes in and goes, this team can't stock the wing tee. Let's put it in. We're going to put in these 5 plays. So we put in belly, buck, down, waggle, and something else. And that's all we rep during practice. Do you know how many times we called that in a game?
0.
2. 2 times. And we got murdered because, like you said, we were working on things we didn't call in a game. So when we came time to the game, we lost 4 days of practice, not practicing what we actually do. And then from that point on, I was like, that always stuck with me. And like you said, go back. What are you calling in practice? What are you running a game? Do they equal?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't, fix it. And I'm never putting in a new offense like in the 3 days or 4 days before. I was just like, oh God, I feel so stupid, nasty.
It's a chase the ghost right there.
Yeah. All right, we have a good question from Coach. Do you schedule situational drives in practice based on optimum or hoped for execution efficiency or previous performance game efficiency trends?
That's a long question.
I know, that was a mouthful for me.
I'm like, Coach Brett, you're killing me. Okay, do you schedule situational drives in practice based on optimal or hoped for execution? Holy shnikes, you can tell.
Okay, so I'm a Ron McAfee this. When you're doing situations, are you doing it based on last year's stats or like 3 games before the season? How do you do that?
Every day in practice for us, we'll do some situational, so we have every period is situational. So like this 7-on-7 is this, team is this, something else. But then we also do these move the ball periods where they're different scenarios. And so then that's kind of, you're getting more into 2 minute, 4 minute, end of half, kind of all those things. Because then that also is another layer on top of everything, that a 1st and 10 on the opening drive of the game is different than a 1st and 10 with 28 seconds left in the half. So, and then that is also different. 1st and 10 is different on your own 20 with 30 seconds than on the opposing 20. So I think all the time you're trying to end up with if you run stretch, your buck sweep is your base run, and you're going to run that no matter what. You need to run it all different parts of the field, but then against different time constraints so that players know whether to get out of bounds, stay in bounds. Like you saw in the NFL this year, like should they score, should they not score?
The Madden strategy.
Yeah, so you got to kind of figure out those different things. So with Brett stuff, it's always. I did a thing last year where I went through and picked out all the 2-minute drives from the NFL and found good examples of each, like of end of half needing a field goal, end of half needing a touchdown, end of game needing both, end of game where the defense wins, middle 8 examples, and you try and build this library. And then we did a bigger study this offseason on teaching the 2-minute. How should it be? Because I can tell you as an offensive coordinator for 11 years, I think I don't fully grasp how to handle 2 minutes. A head coach, Coach Creek, would always come on the headset and be like, hey, there's 2 minutes left here, but let's not give the other team the ball. And I'm like, well, as an offensive guy, I'm thinking purely about scoring.
Yeah.
But you're telling me I need to also consider the other side of the ball. And that isn't always a natural thing that you think of,
No.
So
usually it's like, screw the defense. I'm just trying to score all the time.
Yeah.
It's their job to stop them. It's my job to score.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So then it's like you come here and you're like, okay, well, if the clock is at 2 minutes, like if you can get it down under 30 seconds, really you're trying to eliminate the possibility for your opponent to score and only leave yourself the chance to score in a 2-minute situation. So then that starts changing things when you have a full understanding of play calling, what you're going to do. You may call a run play here, even though you want the clock running, and waste a lot of time there's a lot of different situations. So Brett, to go back to your original question, I think what you can do is you can look if there's been historical drives that you've been in that you didn't succeed or did succeed in, but just starting the ball with different times on the clock, different parts of the field, with different scoreboards and different timeouts, you can come up with a lot of different permutations. And just the more you can experience of those things, the more comfortable it will be in a game to kind of deal with it. And I think Belichick got interviewed recently, or some time ago I saw it, and he talked about how every 2-minute situation is kind of different because, obviously there's the 2-minute, timeout in the NFL, but number of timeouts you and they have, the scoreboard, where the ball is, all these things play a factor in all your decision making. So I would try and do as much of that as I could.
Do you think you can go overboard with analytics and just like get in the weeds and everything? And if you can, what's just like one thing you think a high school coach could implement right now and get the advantage over their opponent using analytics?
So you can absolutely go overboard. I mean, there's so much data out there, and you can argue anything, mathematically. I think one of the best things that we do, that I've always done is to grade whether a play is successful or not, and we call it efficiency. And so, like, if it's on a 1st and 10 play and you get 4 yards or more, it's a good play. It doesn't matter if you get 70 yards or 5 yards, it's a good play. So at 2nd and 4, you got to get half the distance for a first down. And 3rd down, you got to get a first down. And what you end up with is this percentage of how successful the play is in getting you first downs, which ultimately get you touchdowns. And so what I don't look at then is how many yards per play something gets. I look at the efficiency. So if you start putting that in, you'll start seeing, against your opponent, they really struggle with this formation is 80% efficient against them, but people aren't using it very much. So you're like, well, that's a pretty good question to kick off your game plan with, is why is this formation really hurting them? Or conversely, if you're looking at yourself, why is it that every time we blitz, our opponent cripples us, gets a lot of yardage, and we're a very low efficiency team. So I think grading things efficiency and not putting in, looking at averages, I think that could be misleading. Like no one would run a quarterback sneak. Like if it was based off yardages, I mean, you'd be like, take that out, and we're running Hail Mary every play because when we get that thing, it's 50 yards. So you got to look at efficiency of plays.
Okay. All right. And what's a simple formula for that?
First down greater than 40%, second down half the distance needed for a first down, third down did you get first?
That's it. And then if they started implementing that right now, they could see some big time results.
Yeah, I think, what you're looking for is anything above like 54% becomes really interesting. So you apply it to your opponent. Okay, are they good on first down? Yeah, okay, they're really good. And then you can kind of go through all the different situations. Do it before you even, worry about are they a wing team? You can get a great picture of your opponent by just that one data point and knowing what situations are they good at, what formations are they good at, which are the plays that really are concerned. I think it creates a lot of clarity on what your opponent is good and bad at. And that's how I used to start my game planning when I was at Laverne was, all right, what formations do they suck at? And, if we can find a formation that causes them problems, then that's our top formation of the week. If we can get into that, and we had games where we're in one formation the entire second half. And I don't even mean like one formation and flipping it, just one formation, and if you run a play and you feel good about it and it gets 8 yards on first down, then I'm going to call it again and again and again. And it sounds kind of weird, but I don't get bored. Like,
yeah,
if you get 8 yards on a play on first down and you're like, they haven't
aren't you doing it again
to it, let's try on 2nd and 2. And if you get 8 more yards, why call anything different if that's what's going to win you the game? And that's the ultimate goal. The goal isn't to run as many plays as you possibly can. It's to win the ball game.
I agree. I call that the Madden strategy because when I was growing up playing my friends, if they couldn't stop a play, I was just hurrying up, holding triangle because I was on the PS2, running the same play, and they were yelling, "That's cheese! That you're not playing for real." I'm like, homie, I just care about the score. I don't care about anything like that. And I think a lot of coaches, we've had that stuff that when we go back and break down the game and we're like, damn, when I called pin and pull, I was getting like 14, 15 yards a game, but I like called it 4 times. So why in the world did I get away from that?
Yeah.
And do you find, is there something you're doing during the game? Like, hey, coach, every time you call inside zone, you're getting 12 yards a carry. You might need to start calling that, or is that something that you figure out at the end, like the next day when you break it down?
No, we do try and keep good track in game. Obviously, at a Division I school, you've got so many people, the GAs and QCs, and I think it becomes easy to track a lot of different pieces, and then having one person kind of consolidate it down and be like, hey, 1st and 10, you're getting this percentage blitz versus what we had expected was this, and you can kind of provide a running commentary and reminders of situations. At smaller schools, I think it's all about how you chart plays. One of the things that's just kind of cool is even if you're a zone team, is just having like a chart of like A gaps, B gaps, C gaps, D gaps. So if you call outside run to the right, you write 10. If you got 10 yards, then 12. And you just look down as a play caller and whoever sat next to you charting you, you're like, oh, we're running outside of the right. We're getting 10 yards, 12 yards, 14 yards. I probably
keep doing it.
It's more visual. It's easier to kind of decipher. But I would always try and go back through the charting stuff in game. And then I don't know about everyone else, but at halftime, I was always trying to script the second half. So you'd go down, talk to the kids, talk to the coaches, kind of lay out the plan, and then just trying to like get some quiet time to kind of script the second half. And usually that was like, hey, what's the best formation in this game? What do we feel comfortable with? And then here we go.
Okay. I love that. Coach, I appreciate you coming on. If coaches want to reach out, I know you have a newsletter.
Yeah.
But that's something, if they just want to ask you a question or something, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Hit me up on Twitter at Coach_Worsell. DM me. I'll get back to you. I'm usually pretty good about that. And then I'll give my cell phone out and we can kind of connect. But yeah, happy to help anybody.
All right. And if coaches, it's in the description. And when you come back for the replay, because Coach Beard wanted to know if this will be available later, it will. It'll stay up on the channel. It'll be in the very first pinned comment. Coach, I appreciate you coming on, man.
No, a pleasure. I got to up my camera game to get as good as you now.
Stop it. Just did this. This is 5 years in the making. Coach T-Mac helped me out and everything. And like we were talking about earlier, it took so long to get this actually working. I've had this camera for like a week and a half, and I just started working yesterday. So I need to get my math game up, man. I'm a math teacher, and you just put me to shame. I need to after I do the honey-do list that I'm about to, I'm going to crack open Huddle and just start implementing data so I can get that. Because I loved what you said before we go about the situations, and because we're about to start spring practice. Yeah. So I'm going to go look like, what did we see a lot of as a play caller? And that's what we're going to try to rep a lot more of during practice.
Amen.
Yeah. And so have a good one, coaches. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll talk to y'all later, coaches.